And we also have our CRA since 1985. We've got to be good too, because we do have a CRA board member in the audience, so I can't say all the other stuff I was going to say. No, I'm kidding.
Brian did a great presentation next door.
But since it is CRAs, just to give some facts, the CRA was founded in 1985 and it includes 28% of the city, so around 1,268 acres. One of the big things about CRAs, as you know, you might have heard through your trainings, everything, marketing, those promotions, those kind of things are gray areas for CRAs, but what we're trying to present here is how public art can be a gateway for you and help you in those initiatives. And I do have on this panel with me, we have, well, he's getting blocked by the Spoonbills in Flight statue, but we have Dr. Jeffrey Wilhelm Burton. He is also goes by Dr. J, and he used to be the City of Palmetto CRA Director. He is now the Urban Manager for the City of Tampa CRA, and he's your outgoing FRA President. Then we have John and Vicki Moore. They are the President and Principal Architect of Moore 2 Design. And we have Ron Berman, who is owner of Berman Studios. You'll find, they'll give you the information, but they're very qualified individuals. They've done amazing things for our city, and now I'm going to give them the floor so they can explain all the great things they've done.
How to inspire your CRA board and create award-winning public art. We're going to let Jeff start this off and tell you history of the Seahorse. He did a very good video, and I thought it was a great way to kick it off.
Hi, this is Jeff Burton with the Palmetto Community Redevelopment Agency, and I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. This is the Seahorse. This is an iconic figure from Palmetto's history, built in the 1950s and demolished in the 1980s to make way for an expanded bridge over the Manatee River. The Palmetto CRA wanted to bring back this piece of culture, not only as a piece of public art, but also as a part of our branding for the city. We hired artist Ron Berman to build a 28-foot tall styrofoam and fiberglass structure. He did it in pieces to be assembled later into one larger piece of art. While he did that, we built an 8-foot tall structure at the site of the original Seahorse, and we surrounded it with low-impact development stormwater pretreatment. Once Ron got all of his pieces created, he assembled them on a structural pole, and he began to work on the final exterior. Here you see Ron going over this with project architect John Moore, preparing to put all the pieces together, and finally we're going to move it to the site. But while they're working on that, we're back at the actual site, putting together the storm papers using historic colors for the city of Palmetto that the CRA has used as a theme. Back at the artist studio, John and Ron are continuing to work on that Seahorse, getting it to its final exterior. We had one more surprise for Ron. We brought in the son of the original Seahorse sculptor, Tom Winter, and his wife Evelyn to take a look. The pedestal was complete and waiting for the Seahorse. Here you see Ron stressing over the fact that we're lifting the Seahorse using a large crane and a very large truck to set it on, to move it about 3 blocks down to the Manatee River. Once we get it there, we're going to place it in the exact location of the original Seahorse. And when we do that, you will see the outcome. This is the Seahorse as she stands today, looking over the Manatee River and welcoming people to the city of Palmetto and the Palmetto CRA. This is why we are so grateful to accept the award from the Florida Redevelopment Association for cultural enhancement. Thank you very much.
I'd like to talk a little bit about our team, just to give you a quick background of how us three got together. John and I ran an international design firm of about 80 architects. We were doing projects all around the world. We were in Jordan doing a Dead Sea spa. We were in Tokyo doing a hotel for Disney inside the park. We were working on the Ritz-Carlton Naples spa. And we were working in Palmetto at the Riverside Plaza spa. Around then, the terrorist attacks happened and travel became impossible. So John and I decided that we were going to close down the 80-person international design firm, and we were going to be a 2-person local design firm. John likes to say we wandered around in the desert of Albuquerque for 40 years before we came to the paradise of Palmetto. We are very familiar with art projects. This is a federal courthouse that John designed in Albuquerque. This was a 1% for the Arts project. We really wanted to, this entire project embrace the culture and the history of Albuquerque. And the sculpture that you see here is a pioneer woman who is making her journey with her children across the United States to develop the new frontier. We had a client at Sanibel Harbor Resort. We met him at an art conference, or a conference in Austria, a spa conference, where we were keynote speakers. They needed a major renovation for their spa, so we started asking them questions. Do you have a unique theme? What sets you apart? He said, we have a Baytar room. Like, wow, what's a Baytar room? And he said that it uses sound and sound therapy. You can get the equivalent of 8 hours of sleep in a 55-minute treatment. It is the ultimate in reducing. Yeah, exactly, right? And that's what I'm saying. I'm just, okay, they're going there, and I'm going to be the first one to do that. And it's the ultimate in reducing stress and pain relief through music. So we went to Sanibel Harbor, and they knew they needed a major renovation, and the first thing I wanted to see was that Baytar room. And that's what the Baytar room looked like. We said, well, if you want us to turn you into a world-class spa, we're gonna have to do something about that. And John and I looked at each other and we said, you know, they don't have a lot of money for this project. We need an artist. As luck would have it, we were at the Harley-Davidson store a few days later, getting some accessories for John's Harley, and we found an artist. And we found this guy up on a ladder, and he was painting murals in the Harley-Davidson store. So I walked over and I tugged on his jeans and I asked him if he'd be interested in doing any commercial work. He said, sure, I'm a starving artist. So they didn't have a theme, but we knew we could create one. We started by research. John read The Singing River. He found out about the Calusa Indians, and he even found a love story in this book. And we have, if many of you have been to spas, couple treatments are very popular, and we wanted to add romance to this spa. So we designed a Rasool. We knew about Rasools because of the work we had done in Jordan, but then we challenged Ron to give us a love story.
Okay, so this specific painting represents the Calusa Indians. When I came to the resort, one of the things as an artist, I look at different aspects of nature and noticed that there was a bunch of shell mounds. That specific area had a lot of history with the Calusa Indians, so I thought maybe we could just bring that back. This painting represents the landscape that is in the Sanibel area, and also has a lot of elements of the Calusa Indians. The blanket draped over the canoe has a lot of symbolism in it, and it's, I like to do a lot of historic elements in any of my art. And so the painting then was scanned and transferred to what's called an Oreo print. An Oreo print basically is seen from both sides because it was on glass and because it was two parts of the room, the front and back side of the room, it had to be visible on both sides. Therefore, the Oreo print was installed. It's a complicated process, by the way. It's not that easy.
But Ron, what are we going to do about that Baytar room?
Oh, I'm gonna throw it away. So here, again, I did a portrait of the landscape, but they told me that the theme was, of the whole experience was to go from day into night. So I did a portrait of the landscape at sunset, and then I thought to myself, you know, I saw one time where fluorescent light, which is clear to the naked eye until it's hit with black light. And I said, let me try something. And I asked John to get us some black lights. And so the ambient lighting was on dimmers, and the black lights were underneath the bed. So as you turn the on or the dimmer down, all is left is the black light and the fluorescent whites, which then becomes visible. So I painted the painting, and then on top of the painting, I made a night scene in fluorescent white.
And you can see on the right, the Calusa shell mound with the spiritual guide giving thanks to the heavens.
The constellation of Orion, which was very important to that.
But you guys don't care about all that. What you want to hear about is public art and the CRA. So, Jeff, when I read the introduction that you wrote to the attendees, you changed my entire presentation. I loved it. You talk about being the dreamers, the planners, and the builders of the future. And more importantly, you said we need to make our visions into realities. We're going to hopefully help you understand how to do that. Creating art for a CRA, you've got to find the right team. You need to develop your vision for the art. The most important thing you need to do is budget and plan from the beginning. Create excitement about the art and provide dynamic visual aids for the art. The building blocks for a strong theme are culture and history, consistency, connectivity, and sustainability. Now, this particular project, another architect had been asked to design the Seahorse gift shop building. We were at the same CRA board meeting when the architect presented, and he had presented at a site that was quite a distance from parking. The CRA board was concerned that it wouldn't get a lot of traffic, but what I learned about it is that the weather vane that this architect had put at the top of the building was iconic for the seahorse, that statue that has stood in Palmetto in the 50s through the 80s. The architect didn't take it well when the board turned him down, and he said, if you don't like my concept, find another architect. So I called Jeff the next morning, and I said, Jeff, can we give that one a shot? And he did the same thing he always does to me, he laughed. And he said, if you can get a signed work assignment, you can do it. So, never say die. We started researching the culture and the history of Palmetto. We found pictures, we dug through archives, we found pictures of the seahorse that had stood there before. We knew where it was located, and we thought it needed to go back into the same area. So we went to Jeff and I said, hey Jeff, we want to do a 30-foot tall seahorse. And he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, we know a guy.
And before we let him speak, I gotta tell you that research is not cheap. Cost me $350 for an alligator handbag that was 50 years old, that had been sold in the original gift shop. You gotta budget that into.
Moving on. So Ron, will you tell us a little bit about the bear that you sculpted?
Okay, it's one weird looking seahorse. That's one weird looking guy. So, this specific piece is done in Mackinac City, Michigan. The retailer asked me to do an entryway. What was special about this project is the process of fabrication, which, and retailers are always on the cheap. They're always like, oh, cut it. And they don't care really what it looks like as long as it's big. So I had to really get inventive on the process of which this big sculpture was fabricated. What I did was I drew it in 3D. From the 3D process, I went ahead and drew also a wireframe around it. That wireframe transitioned into 1/4-inch steel rod. The steel rod was then encapsulated in styrofoam, or I should say urethane foam, which cut down 80% of the material. Also increased the strength, because now you have steel every 16 inches around that sculpture. So you had 2 inches of sculpture, within it was at least 16 inches of steel with a 1/4-inch lathing that held the foam. So we went from 90-mile-an-hour wind loads to 180-mile-an-hour wind loads. And the cost was 80% savings on that.
And for those of you who have flown out of Tampa Airport Side A, you may have seen his iguana.
Oh, good. Somebody saw it.
Yeah, who saw that? And then I don't talk about this project, but Ron can.
Oh, here we go. I'm going to boast a little bit. So I certifiably have the largest weenie in the world. I have broken a world record with my weenie, and This is the same process that I went ahead and built my bear. I had a steel structure, again, reinforcing that wind loads up to. The beautiful thing is this process cost much cheaper, increased the strength, and we were able to produce the product also without a lot of artists on hand. Usually when we did stuff for Disney, there was 15 artists. We had a bunch of foam that we cut away from and a bunch of foam that was inside. This only used the material on the surface. It was encompassed in fiberglass, and it also eliminated a lot of the artists. I used a 13-year-old kid. I had to pay him with a college fund. So, but he is ever so proud to have done this, and again, perfect job. I'm really proud of it.
All of the team has experience with Disney. Not only have we done hotels with them, Ron started his career working at Disney doing sculptures. This one he just recently completed. It's in Disney Springs, and it's a donut to reinforce the Everglade donut shop. Now, creating excitement is very important. Every year we do a Christmas mailer, and the Christmas mailer is focused on the projects that we want to work on. This one is called Postcards from the Past. You can see Ron took the original postcard, and then he put a 1957 T-Bird in the shot, so you got a feel for the timeline, and that may be me in my car.
Yeah, that's another cost you gotta build in.
So as we do these mailers, not only do we do the art piece, but on the front we tell you what it is. We tell you that this is a gift shop that was created in the 50s. We tell you there was a seahorse there, and we tell you we're going to bring the seahorse back. Now, it's also very important not only to get your board's approval, but your mayor's pretty important too. So I told Ron we needed a maquette. So Ron designed this maquette for the mayor, so the mayor would understand what it was that we were doing. She went nuts. She really liked the idea. So next, I'm going to give this over to John, who's going to talk about how we go through our process when we make our presentations to the CRA board.
So we're architects and designers, of course, and we work in various softwares. That's just the nature of our industry. And we work in a 3D type of computer. It's almost a computer animation, but not quite. We can do line work, but we can't animate. So anyway, we start with the line work, and then we need to morph that line work into something that's more more like a presentation.
So we asked Jeff, we showed Jeff the initial drawings, and we told him that we needed a rendering. He agreed. And so at the CRA board meeting, Ron turned John's line work into a rendering that's created excitement.
I just want to point out something. Architects generally work in AutoCAD. I work in Lightwave. Lightwave, one of the programs I work in, Lightwave is an animation software. It takes visual textures, materials, colors, and also has about 35 different cameras I can photograph with in the software, just to give you an idea how this was processed out.
And then Jeff, because he is my favorite person in the world, he always likes to throw me a curveball. He asked me to get a hypothetical appraisal. Okay, Jeff, you want me to get an appraisal on a piece of art that hasn't even been created yet? I said, yes. Well, John and I have an extensive background in the arts in Albuquerque and Santa Fe, so we know a lot of people in the business. So we gave our buddy Peter a call. He's done a lot of the estimates for our own personal art collection. And he gave us an estimate that exceeded our work assignment. And so we knew that it was worth the value that we were working towards. And then Jeff asked for a post appraisal, And you can see we went from a conceptual appraisal of $142,000 to $250,000. Now, John, would you talk a little bit about the design development?
Sure, here's a perfect example of taking what's a 3D render that Ron had done and breaking it down into lines that we can actually compute and draw around. So that gives us how much area is exposed to the wind, so we can develop the wind pressure, especially here in Florida, so the seahorse doesn't take wing and fly.
And it made it through the hurricane unscathed. Now, it's also very important to us that this seahorse was fabricated in Palmetto. There happened to be an empty industrial building downtown, about 3 blocks away from our site, and we were able to have an open house in order to introduce the seahorse. We got the community involved. It was an opportunity for the public to see the artist's work. I get after Ron, he never locks the door when he's in there working, and people come in and, then they start asking him questions, and it's like, Ron, you have scheduled me. So, we also got, this was during COVID too. So this project did take longer than it normally would have, and we weren't able to do any kind of a dedication or a ribbon cutting, but we got creative and we said, well, how about if we schedule the CRA board to come in individually, 20 minutes apart, and some of the community, and do a private dedication.
We have to progress, but we like to have the history and the foundation of how we arrived. So huge when you're a little kid, it just stuck out, and you knew you were headed for Palmetto when you were there.
Such a tourist attraction. You wouldn't believe how many people would stop.
A very special piece of history for Raymond and Beverly Barnador.
We've been married a little over 60 years, and we met at the Seahorse Gift Shop.
Tom and Gail Winter's parents owned the original Seahorse. They were overcome with emotion the first time they saw its
The
replacement.
Seahorse, the statue, is a legacy to my parents and Evelyn Winter, but it's also a heritage, a visible heritage to the city of Palmetto.
We had another project that we were asked to get involved in. This is the MCAT station. Our mayor was not happy when the Area Transit Authority put this monstrosity in our main drag. She went 4 years trying to get approval with the Transit Authority to let her do a mural on this building. And then she finally called me and said, look, we need some help. We needed to give it a push. We needed to show them what it was gonna look like. So we did the Kristen Start again. This one's called Somewhere Under the Rainbow. It's an introduction to the reef balls. If you look underneath the manatees there, there's reef balls. We were able to talk about Palmetto's Living Reef and Palmetto Bay, a project we're currently working on. And there again, we did the artwork, we did the overleaf, we told them what was going on. So we've created awareness. And a lot of the local businesses were taking advantage of using this as a backdrop for some of their advertising and marketing. I don't know who this girl is with the beautiful nails, because I didn't have time to get mine done before we came here, because I had to do this presentation.
Once again, you got a budget for those sorts of things.
It is what it is. So at the very end, Ron's done with the mural. He hasn't put his UV coating on, but he's done with the mural. When the mayor calls me and says her granddaughter recently told her her very favorite fish is a Goliath grouper, and could Ron add one in? So I called Ron, he called me a few names. But being the trooper that he is, Ron, would you tell me a little bit about how you...
So basically I work with brush. I don't really airbrush. A lot of artists work with airbrush and paints or spray paint. I'm traditional. I learned traditional painting, and you can see me paint. I wish if I could work, my profit would. Anyways, so this is just a brief.
And this one took longer than expected too, because as you can imagine, this is on the main drag.
He didn't
Palmetto.
finish.
And the number of people who stopped him while he was painting to talk to him it was great. The community got involved, they knew what it was, and really felt like they were a part of the project.
A lot of kids walk by, a lot of kids, that's my favorite part. When kids walk by and they dream and they think, wow, I can do that. Very important, many things.
And the orange shirt was a prerequisite because a bus would come by every 15 minutes at that station.
That was his safety vest.
Yeah. And plus I worked at Home Depot.
He is a starving artist. So now you need to build on your theme. How do you do that? We are right now talking about doing a Seahorse Festival. Ron designed the trash can containers you see before you, and we'd also like to do a Seahorse bench. The first benches we'd like to have would be on the piazza near the Seahorse.
Can I interject for a second? Here you can see a great example of expediency when working in 3D environment. Because I had the Seahorse, it took me literally an hour and a half to produce this. It took me many days to produce the Seahorse, but because I had it in inventory, I already had a sculpture, I can manipulate it very quickly into something else.
So the Seahorse Festival. Ron's been involved in the Outdoor Art Foundation. We know he can do it, so we are working on that. Our next project is the Connor Park project. It's an environmental park. Art has been budgeted as a part of the project from the very beginning, and we wanted to build on our culture and our history, and we are a bird sanctuary. So we wanted to do a sculpture of birds. So we sent out a Christmas art. This one is called Spoonbills in Flight, and there again, we did an overleaf. We told them what it is. We told them about Connor Park. We told them about the art that was going to go there. And I can't overemphasize the power of the maquette that you see right here. It was at
3D print.
it was at the CRA board presentation, and it got unanimous approval to move forward. Now, another benefit to Ron is that he can also do animations. So he's also done an animation of it that is on his YouTube channel. And he'll tell you later how to get to his YouTube channel. And once again, Jeff calls me and wants a hypothetical appraisal. So we got our friend Peter going. We did an appraisal that was more than the work assignment. So Xavier, in the future, we're going to get those appraisals first. And here you can see John and Ron working, looking over the project as it's in process. It's the same process that we used with the Seahorse. We used with the Spoonbills. We have CRA staff and board involvement. Here you can see our mayor, Shirley Berger Bryant, with Brian, or with John. Xavier was there, Antoinette, you were there. It's very important to show them the process. Another project we have is a historic women's club. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s, the women of Palmetto were really the drivers of the downtown area. They installed our first trash barrels. They constructed a sidewalk the length of Main Street. They bought and planted over 1,100 trees. They distributed food to the destitute. They sponsored needy school children. This was the first community building in Manatee County and the first theater in Manatee County. It became the Manatee Players Theater Troupe eventually. And you see the signature water fountain that was added in the 1950s. And this building represents the very heart of our community. But the membership aged out. They weren't able to find young girls to come in and be part of the membership. You know, the young girls changed. But I'm very proud to say that Jeff, as the CRA director, purchased that building in order to preserve our heritage. It is in great need of repair and renovations. It's not ADA compliant, but it's significantly important to our community. Now here you see a site plan of the project. We sat down with Jeff. We know where the historic fountain is. We are going to have outdoor events. On the right, you can see a small pavilion for weddings and smaller group gatherings. On the west side, you can see a very large pavilion with seating for outdoor concerts and events. And you see our historic fountain here. Now, the historic fountain now has a tree growing out of it. So, part of our design team is we're going to bring that fountain back to life. And we want the fountain to come back to life, but we know there are issues with fountains. There are certain people that will take advantage of fountains. In Albuquerque, they would shower in them. So we decided we didn't want a fountain that was dry when there were special events going on. So we asked Ron to create a sculpture of the comedy and tragedy masks. That will be in the fountain when it's turned off and when it's turned on. And it pays homage to the first theater that we had in Manatee County, and we are bringing that theater back as a part of our renovation. So Jeff said, yep, okay, looks good. Got to get the CRA board to approve it. So we had Ron turn it into a rendering. Now, this is a small pavilion. This is where we're going to have the weddings. And this is the power of the dynamic visual aids. And for me, this represented the heart of the women who were in Palmetto and gave so much to the community. For Ron, he likes, we are all ex-Disney kids, we all like photo ops. So this will also be a nice photo op for weddings, husbands and wives as they're getting married. And it's going to be I think it's going to be a very, very nice piece of art. So that's what we have done for the CRA. That's how we did it. And now we have some future work. I swear I'm almost done. We have Jeff, who comes over to our office and says, John, I'm working on this grant. We need a pedestrian bridge. I need it Monday. This was Thursday. He gave us 4 days to design a pedestrian bridge. You can see the significance of its location. You'll see it better here in a minute. You can see the Seahorse, Palmetto Bay, Connor Park, and the pedestrian crossover there down towards the bottom. But I want John to take a little bit of time and tell you about the issues that we had with this.
So everybody knows what the squirrel cages look like that go over that go over the highways. And what they have is they have these long ramps, right, that you gotta have for folks like me who don't walk so good, and gotta go up, right, and come down. Well, you see here the night shot of the $3.5 million investment that we put in with FDOT as a partner and SWIPMUD as a partner, so that we not only got FDOT participation, but we were able to pay for what they call upgrades, so we could use our Palmetto paving and our Palmetto light fixtures and the typical landscaping that we put in, so it becomes a unique environment. And now that's already in, and now Jeff is asking us to come back and we gotta put these long ramps into something we just completed. Well, obviously, that didn't make any sense, and so Ron and I are pulling whatever we have left out, and Vicki walks by and she says, what's the problem? And we tell her. Yeah. And she said, well, put them in the river. So, how cool is that? So now, not only do we have a pedestrian overpass, but we have these ramps that go out to a venue on either side before they turn around and come on ramp back up. So now we have not only the gateway to Palmetto, but 2 new venues
And then we asked Ron to put it on steroids, which he did. And so this is our vision of what this pedestrian bridge will look like, and hopefully Jeff will Xavier, we'll be able to get that grant and get that completed. So we have one more story we'd like to talk to you about, and this is the story of Scarlet. You see the old Seahorse building there with the seahorse. This was a major tourist attraction. There were live alligators and monkeys on display. The scarlet macaw was greatly loved by the children. And then Scarlet stolen. She really was. Someone came and stole her. And luckily she was returned safe because there was a nationwide appeal to bring her back. Alice Myers, the local historian, wrote a cute little book on it years ago. And we saw this as an opportunity when the mayor told us that she had the rights to this book and she would like us to use Ron's art to recreate the book. So here we go again. We said, well, we probably ought to start talking about scarlet macaws. We talked about Scarlet and her being there at the gift shop. An idea starts to create, well, you know, maybe we do a sculpture and we bring her back. And so we said, Ron, you know, we kind of need something to show the mayor. Well, here's the mayor with Scarlet, and she is just in heaven over the fact that we're helping her work on the book. And not only the book, but because of Ron's talents, we'll be able to do an animated story as well. Now, Ron, now you can talk.
So here you can see, I can't see, but you can. So we go from the blueprints into the conceptual into engineer prints comes back to me, and I go ahead and build the actual materials that are going to be used, including bolts. Everything is scaled proportionally to fit together, and then from that I have a model of the structure, and then I go ahead and build on that. This is my software that I work with. This is called ZBrush, and this is where I do all my magic. This particular software is, it's not cheap, but it is very extensive, and lately here I've been really using the hell out of it. So, but here you can see I can implement textures, colors, I can make it bronze, I can make it chrome. Visually, for me, it is the world that I used to work in, and now that I'm freed up. Here you can see I took it in from one program into another program, and this is where I do all my slicing. I take the patterns and I slice it into quadrants of 6 inches, and from 6 inches, I go ahead and create the pattern and draw it out, cut it out. And recently, we've built in-house a CNC machine that cuts the foam for us. This is all 3D printed. It's supposed to cost $10,000. I made it for $400. And
He charges us $10,000.
But here you can see the machine cutting the foam, and it's been a great asset. I wish I had it during the Seahorse project, but I have it now. And here you can see those pieces, those 6-inch pieces are coming together, and it's going to overlay onto the 3D model so you can see and reference. And then from that, I went ahead and I started doing, this is the keyway, by the way, where the pole fits in. And this, you can't avoid doing things by hand. I wish, I really do wish, I really do wish. And I drink a lot of coffee, this is evident here, so. But in this particular environment in my shop, Jeff, thank you for that. But in this particular environment, I had 11-foot ceilings and I have a 23-foot seahorse. How am I going to do that? So I take the pieces and I fit them together with a keyway. So each piece goes in, gets sculpted, another one moves out, another one puts down, and again, sculpt from that up, and then do it all horizontally. So it was a bit of a challenge, but whatever. Here you can see that fitting onto the pole, which was fantastic. I really love this part. And here's a 3D printed maquette that I sculpt from. You can see the scale. This particular fiberglass process used Conformat. It's a very strong material. It's kind of like Kevlar, and it's impervious to any impact. Here you can see I've done some detail work. This is my own homemade clay that turns into like a rock. And I do all my fine detail in that rather than creating molds and wasting material and time. If you want to get in touch with me, here's some of the stuff. Oh, not yet, but anyways, I'm sorry. Here you can see the reef ball, 3D printed shell that went on top of the reef ball, and that was also made in mold and cast. Here we're putting it in place. And we also had the No Shoes Reef Foundation, which Vicky's going to tell you about, John. And this is also plexiglass we put in there for night lighting and painting. All this time, from the very beginning of the mural, we had a plan. We had a 5 to 10 year vision. Because of Jeff's visions and all of us working together, this is really important to have a vision for the future, to have a plan with every bit of art that you implement.
Thank you. So it's during the time of COVID still. We didn't get to do a public dedication or ribbon cutting, but we got a group of us together that are all into the environment. When we did our living reef next to the seawall, Reef Innovations are a part of Kenny Chesney's Charity Foundation, and they presented the project, the living seawall, to Kenny, and he made us a part of his charity. And you say, well, you know, big deal, what does that mean? Well, what that means is when Kenny Chesney performs in our area, a percentage of the proceeds of the sales of t-shirts, flip-flops, those type of products will come to the CRA, and we can use it for new art, we can use it to maintain the art. Lots of opportunities for that, being a part of that charity. And now, John, you want to talk a little bit now about the refunds?
You bet. This, you know, we talked earlier on about the importance of connectivity. And so you can see here in this picture, all these separate pieces really connect to form a strong whole together. You can see the Seahorse location looking over what's now a derelict bay with derelict boats in it and human waste and stuff you don't even want to know about. And this project is going to clean that up. We're deploying 76 reef structures, and they all are made up of 5 separate pieces, and they're designed for oyster and filterfish habitat. And some of you probably know that a mature oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. So you take and multiply that 50 gallons, and
Xavier, didn't you do the math on that?
It can filter 726 Olympic-sized pools a day of worth of water a day for oysters. And that's just a few oysters. That's not like, you know, the 75 clusters of oysters that we're talking about this project.
so this is a 23-acre installation. It's important to note that, as we mentioned earlier on, we had a 51-acre water basin that was draining directly into our bay and polluting our bay with plastic bags and all the stuff that comes right off the surface. With Connor Park, we took what was a brownfield site, which you heard earlier if you were in here, all about brownfield, and we cleaned it up, and we formed this 500,000 gallon pond. And so all the water from that 51 acres flows into the pond. We have materials in the pond that actually filter the water themselves. Cattails are a good example, and other materials like that, and so they filter the water before it gets released into the bay. So it's a two-part process where we're cleaning the water first, and then the water that's in the bay, the oysters are gonna do the rest for us. And of course, along with the oysters comes all sorts of we think, wonderful marine life, which brings us back to the Under the Rainbow print we did.
So because we were doing permitting for this project during COVID, and as you all know, there's a lot of remote work going on, but we do have our permits. We have our permits from the environmental agencies, and we have the Corps of Engineer permits, and we're ready to go. So what's our art opportunity for this? Well, Xavier, I hate to tell you this on the fly, but we've been thinking about an underwater sculpture garden. So, before we have questions, everybody got a postcard? Turn it over, please. And Brian Williams, you need to wake up and come up here. Come on up. No, you need to. We're going to have a raffle. Now, on the back of that card, there's a little palmetto seahorse, and it's got a number on it.
This is our Oprah part of the show, guys.
You might want to grab those extra ones on the chairs. This can be big, no, I don't.
Does anybody have 109? 109.
Oh, we have a winner! Come on up.
That might have been great.
He's doing business in Vermont. You're gonna say Brian Williams and he's
No, it's not a free project.
Can I redraw the pictures? We wanna, I hope I was loud enough, I haven't been told that before. I want to present the seahorse to you. Son of a very good artist. Hopefully one day we'll be doing right. Thank you very much. You're welcome very much.
Okay, and we have, before we end, we have one more surprise.
Yeah.
We're expecting to get that back when you.
Is that So, Xavier was not part of our team when we were building the seahorse, but he is a very big supporter of the arts, and he's a very big supporter of the projects that we're working on. So, Ron?
This is for you. Vicky, you had those appraised yet?
Nope, no, but I know a guy.
Trust me, it's gonna be-
I know a guy. So we're going to kick it off with questions and answers, and I'm going to start because I talk as much as Ron does. Jeff, how can the people in this audience hire our team to do their projects?
So, first of all, you know why the appraisals were done, right? The appraisals were done because what's the first thing somebody in the audience is gonna ask when you show them a 28-foot tall seahorse? And they're gonna look at you and they're gonna go, you're using our money to pay for that? So you have to give your board the ability to make a decision on a financial basis. And you want to show that, first of all, the money that they're investing is less than the value of the product. It's an intrinsic, there's that value. There is a market value. We also wanted to show that as it was being built, it's a unique thing. It has an intrinsic value. You won't find that anywhere else. You better not find that anywhere else. Mr. Artist, don't be selling those 3D models to somebody. You will see them on
Unless
and
they're
cereal.
The proceeds are going to the city.
There you go. But the other thing is the intrinsic value. And for those of us that grew up in the city of Palmetto, what is the one thing that we can get the board to agree upon that they would actually invest in that would say, this is who we are? And Commissioner Williams and Barnador and, everybody else is there, they all grew up there. And you could say to them, hey, this story about the seahorse. And they'll tell you an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I mean, they just stories, right? And he'll even tell you the story about the dare when you were a kid in Palmetto. There was at the foot of the seahorse, there was a fence, chain link fence with a concrete pad that had, what was the name of the critter? Joe, the alligator.
About 12 foot long.
And the challenge was to jump over that fence, run through that alligator pit, and jump over to the other side.
Only Florida.
I didn't do that. But I know someone who did. And at the same time, and I'm having this issue in the city of Tampa now, it was easy in the city of Palmetto I didn't even have to ask, what is it that says Palmetto? What image, what icon, what sculpture, what 3D model, if you looked at it and say Palmetto? It's a seahorse. It's obvious. And the board was, the way we put it to them, the way we phrased it with them it was automatic, because this is one that they're not going to argue about. They're going to embrace that. But we had to make sure that they had a defense for the folks, and they were there. You spent too much money on that. We had to make sure that it was structurally okay, building department. We had to make sure that, and I will tell you this, the result that we got was way more than what we expected. Hired the right artist, hired somebody that could listen to us talk about the seahorse and turn it into a reality.
Honestly, it was the first time that I felt that I was doing art. The real definition of art, which is to bring that emotion back to a person's heart.
And they come in and people wept when they saw that seahorse. And, I asked the same, I've gone through this before, so I go to a new city and it's a much larger city, but you ask, what is it that when you look at it, it would say Tampa? And this is a question we've been posing for the better part of a year now, because
You haven't called us.
we plan on taking advantage of that experience that I have had. Now, as for CRA folks, we had a Brownfield, who was in the Brownfield, and you heard me say, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be an architect. You don't have to have any design skills. We speak a language that everybody understands. We speak a language as CRA professionals that when we come into the room, artists understand us, architects, engineers, environmentalists, and what is that language? Money. Is exactly right. And we have, that's our tool, that's what we wear, that's our medium that we paint in. And when you get the right people, you have the right board, you have to, everything lines up on the lines. Guess what? If you look, is it still in the CRA plan, or did you take it out because we finished it? Seahorse?
Still in the plan.
It was specifically designated, of course, the location was designated. We knew exactly what we wanted to do. We put it in an update of the plan. The board could rely on the fact that it was already there. The board could rely on the fact that they were making an investment. the board to rely on the fact that I was pulling at their heartstrings, and they loved every minute of it. When they saw it, because they came in individually, they cried. Because it just was that thing that once in a lifetime in that city. And you can go anywhere, and believe me, I came back from the hurricane, and the first thing I asked was, I don't even work there anymore. How's the seahorse? Is it all right?
That's all right.
And you can do this. You can do this, and you don't have to make it just public art. It can be your brand. It can, if you look at the Palmetto CRA's logo, it went from one thing, and now it's a seahorse.
It's on your bags, the free stuff you got.
And our job is completed because when you're in Florida and you hear seahorse, you're gonna think about, and that's what our goal was to get you thinking, and to think in a positive, beautiful, environmental, historic way. Go ahead.
So this is the question part of the presentation. And just one note, if you have questions, we have a mic here. If you think you can project loud enough, we can reiterate the question for the panel. But one of the big things that I think is important in this is if you have a major historic highway, a state road that runs through your city, which if you're in Florida, you know that a lot of cities were a little cheap on their roads, so they use the state roads as their major thoroughfares. There used to be a time when they were 2 lanes, or they were small lanes, and so they had pretty things on the side that made them scenic highways, and when they expanded the roads, they took them out. So think about those historic photos, think about all those things, and you could find your brand, because that's what happened. The seahorse got taken out when they had to move the road, and we were able to bring it back and put it on the side of US 41 again. So just think about those kind of things. Historically, you might see a road now that's 4 lanes. Was it 2 lane? Were there palm trees on the side of your road? Was it a scenic highway? There might have been cool things in your city that you had no clue about. So just think about that, but we love questions, public art questions. These guys are world famous, they're world known. You heard he has Guinness Book of World Record, the largest wiener in the world. It's in the book, so just please ask. Yes?
I had a question regarding the lightweight versus AutoCAD. I currently attend USF and Tampa.
Schools.
And working on smart city planning, so I do a lot of GIS and LiDAR. Now, I hear about AutoCAD sometimes being a little bit complicated. How would you say the performance of lightweight is compared and the cost compared as well?
So lightweight, sure, you want to go?
Yeah, I don't know.
So Lightwave is an animation software. There is a problem, I can tell you.